Good evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to the regular City Council meeting for July 23rd, 2013. If you could just take a moment to check your phones to ensure that they're either on off, vibrate, or silent, I would sincerely appreciate it so it will not disrupt this evening's proceedings. At this time, we're going to stand and recite the Pledge of Allegiance together. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Tonight's invocation will be given by Councilman Pelley.
Thank you, Mayor. Heavenly Creator, bless us with your wisdom as we seek to transact the people's business on this warm summer evening. Help us to be capable servants worthy of the citizens we serve. Please give us vision to understand the challenges facing our community and the wisdom to respond with strength and grace. We thank you tonight for your hardworking and capable city staff and the support they provide our city council. Thank you.
Thank you. Tonight we're going to move straight into our consent agenda. We do not have any items under our proclamations. Council, we have a very comprehensive consent agenda, items A through P. And before I ask for a motion from City Council,
approval.
Before I ask for a motion from City Council, I will ask the community if there's anyone here to speak on any item on the consent agenda, items A through P. All right. Now I ask for a motion from council.
Move approval.
Second.
Someone had a wonderful vacations ready to get to work. I understand. We do have a motion and a second. And any further questions or comments?
Mayor, I'd just like to speak very briefly to item M1 and M2.
Okay.
About the sidewalk project in South Asheville. There's been some questions about the extent of that project, and I'd just like to let the public know that that sidewalk being approved tonight is for Overlook Road between Long Shoals Road and Springside Road. It'll be about 4/10 of a mile in length and will connect 3 public schools, T.C. Robertson, Kuntz, and Valley Springs, as well as 2 churches and the South Buncombe Library. I believe this project goes forward with our goals of bringing greater pedestrian safety to South Asheville.
Okay. Thank you for bringing that to everyone's attention. All right, Council, all in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. The motion carries. At this time, we're going to have a presentation from the East End Neighborhood Association, and Ms. Renee White will make the presentation. Welcome, Ms. White.
Good evening.
And I just want to make sure you're asking for 10 minutes.
10 minutes.
For those, I need at least 3 people to raise their hands to support that request. All right, thank you.
To our Honorable Mayor, Terry Bellamy, to our Vice Mayor, Esther Manhammer, to all City Council members. I am Renee White, President of the East End Valley Street Neighborhood Association. And our East End Valley Street Neighborhood Association would like to say thank you to the Council for the opportunity to address you this evening. We're here to request that Council pass a resolution reiterating that the East End Valley Street Neighborhood Association and the understanding of what occurred at a previous council meeting in reference to Brewfest in 2011 and 2012. We started our journey in 2011 looking at Brewfest, reviewing our concerns about Brewfest and what was going on in our neighborhood at our community park, Martin Luther King. The East End community complained loudly about the Brewfest, the attendees' behavior while outside the gates of the Martin Luther King Park, the venue both entering the festival and after leaving it. People arrived with beer. They drank beer, left the refuse of broken beer bottles, styrofoam coolers after the festival in some of our neighbors' yards. After the festival, folks that had been drinking beer all day had to be somewhat inebriated, got into their cars, and drove through our community neighborhood, whereas there's a park where children play. Was there a sobriety checkpoint anywhere? No, there was not. Many of the attendees, when they left, they were belligerent to some of our residents, and when told they could not park in particular locations, they made loud noises and talked really ugly to our neighbors. Our streets were so jammed with cars on both sides, it was almost impossible for traffic to move through, and we worried about emergency vehicles that may have to come through, such as a fire truck. After the outcry from the community, the organizers of Brewfest requested to attend the association meeting. If I remember correctly, that meeting was in May of 2012. Surely after attending that meeting, it had to be abundantly clear that we did not want the Brewfest to return to Martin Luther King Park. They were not welcome to return, and in that meeting, the Neighborhood Association and the organizers' liaison suggested that additional law enforcement be present to patrol the neighborhood for the specific purpose of alleviating the problems mentioned earlier at the Say It Once Pack Square renovations were done. We would not have to worry about future festivals. To follow up our association president, which was me, we came before council when it met at the Public Works Building in 2012 to ask council and let them know our concerns about Brewfest and to let them know that we did not want it to return in 2012. What we took from that council meeting was that we thought that we had 7 council members who supported us and it would give Brewfest their walking papers. Flash forward to now. Needless to say, it was announced that Brewfest was on the calendar for 2013. They had a website up promoting the venue at Martin Luther King Park, and it was rapidly selling out tickets. Folks attending the meeting were outraged in our neighborhood. Again, I repeat, we would not have been more clear that we did not want them back. The puzzling part is that despite that meeting, expressing our desires, the community never heard a word from Brewfest organizers stating they were unable to lock down a different venue or a different location for the festival and that it would not be back in Martin Luther King Park. We didn't get a phone call, email, text, or anything. One cannot help but feel that the attitude shows the lack of regard for our desires in our community. We were told by the neighborhood organizer liaison that the city had received no complaints about the 2012 festival, so it was assumed that all was well. That was true because the Asheville Police Department did a fine job of patrolling and keeping things in order outside of the festival. So that still doesn't make it right to go on and proceed with an event that we vehemently objected to having, an event that we instructed the neighborhood organizer to make the city aware of our position. No, it does not make it right. We get that the Brewfest was originally a so-called community initiative, but the East End alone has bore the brunt of that festival. We have said it before, and we'll say it again. We do not want Brewfest back in Martin Luther King Park. We suggest that they take the event to a more suitable venue, like Lewis Soccer Field. It's accessible and there's plenty of parking. In closing, our association supports the fundraising that Brew Festival is for, Big Brothers and Big Sisters. That's a great organization. But it's not the type of event that we want in our neighborhood any longer. It's a family-oriented neighborhood, and Martin Luther King Park is a family-oriented park. Thank you for listening. We trust that you will do the right thing and submit a resolution in regards to this issue. We have met with the organizers and expressed our desires and our concerns. We do understand that that festival is going to be in the park in 2013. This year is what we understand. We have met with them and we've talked to them about some things that we would like to see done. If we have to accept the fact that they're going to be there in 2013, but we want it made clear that in 2014 we do not want Brewfest back in Martin Luther King Park. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Ms. White. So, Council, the request is that we pass a resolution supporting the neighborhood's request regarding the Brewfest. And it sounds like it's an incompatible use. It's not working. The residents are not happy. This is not the first time we heard this. We heard it at a meeting at the Public Works Department before this same City Council. And so I would recommend that we support the residents in their request to assist Brewfest organizers in finding another location that may be more suitable for their event.
I would second that, Mayor.
I'm not making a motion because I'm presiding, but if you want to make the motion, someone else would have to second it.
So moved. There is a representative from Brewfest here tonight who would like to.
Are we talking about Brewgrass?
Brewgrass.
Bluegrass.
Yeah. Who can and follow up on from their perspective. And,
that would be great. I didn't know that, but that would be great. If you could come, state your name for the record, that would be great. Thank you so very much for being here.
Thank you all. Eddie Dewey with Brewgrass Festival. We have been meeting with the East End Neighborhood Association. There's been some some communication or lack thereof in the past couple of years. Brewgrass started its first year in 1997 at Martin Luther King. In the past 17 years, it's been at that site 10 times. And I think part of what happened was when Roger McGuire Green got reopened and a lot of the festivals moved out, we had always been there and didn't really understand the scope or really the sensitivity of what the neighborhood was saying. We've met with them a handful of times now. We understand it. We are in support of moving the festival too. We have been working with the city and think we have an agreement and to move that festival over to Memorial Stadium. We're excited about that in 2014. We've asked for the East End's indulgence for 13, which I think they are willing to give us, and so that's kind of our statement. I think most of y'all know about Brewgrass, and I could get into what it does for the community and the impact it's had on the brewing community in the city over the last 5 years, but that's kind of our position, and with your support and the city staff, who's been great so far, we'd like to see it moved in 2014.
Okay. Thank you very much. I appreciate you being here. I will just say this. Moving it from Martin Luther King to Memorial Stadium may even be worse, only because of you're definitely going to be wrapped around even more residential units. It may be that staff, we sit down and look at maybe Carrier Park, John B. Lewis Soccer Field, where there's not a lot of residential uses around the facility, because it's a great event. You get a lot of people coming, you sell out fast, so people really want to support you. So if we could have staff work with the organizers to look at facilities that will accommodate additional parking, and not so many residential units around, it may be better, because I think if you do Memorial Stadium, you're going to have some of the same neighborhood residents complaining, because it's the same neighborhood, it's just down the street. And so it would make sense to really spend some time looking and scouting a great location to kind of make sure you're successful and the surrounding community is successful. So just making sure it's compatible so you can stay for a longer duration. So I would just ask council consideration that the parties sit down with the staff and talk about suitable locations that may be better access and more accessible.
Given that, would it be better to follow our normal procedures and get a staff report on the alternatives available before we pass a resolution in any regard?
Well, I think part of it is we've heard this issue before, and the residents are saying we don't want to be ignored again. And so if we had followed up over a year ago, we probably would have been further down the road and we wouldn't be at this juncture. So if I can get the commitment from council to support staff to make sure it happens this time, that's fine with me. But other than that, a resolution kind of pinning us down, it will happen is important. Councilman Smith.
Yeah, I think that I'm willing to absolutely support the motion of moving it. I really appreciate Brewgrass's willingness to hear what the residents in the neighborhood are saying and work with staff to find that new place. I don't know exactly where it'll be. Hopefully it'll be a place where lots of people can walk and take the bus and use other alternative forms of transportation, and we'll be sensitive to whatever neighborhoods are around it as well.
Yeah, we're working, and that was one of the requests of the East End neighborhood, as well as talking with staff, and we're working to create shuttling and trolley. That was put into place last year, but we're going to expand it for 13. We have, starting at the end of last year's festival, been talking with multiple city staff about other options for Brewgrass. So, Terry, that has been in place. And, we're, as we told East End Neighborhood Association, we understand what's going on. We also know that it's a business that's been going on for 17 years. It's community supportive, and we just are looking for a viable second option, and we're willing to move it if we can find that site that works. And we're under the understanding that we have that, and so we can.
Can I just a point of clarity? What is the resolution that would be that you would like considered tonight?
I think for the East End community, it is assurances that this is the last year that Brewfest will take place in Martin Luther King Park.
Correct. And okay, so that's the resolution. Would you characterize? And what do you have to say about that resolution, that this be the last year that it's in Martin Luther and it be at some other location?
Yeah, our statement to Eastern Neighborhood has been, listen, we understand, and we will move it when we find a location. We understand also that Memorial Stadium is in the neighborhood. I have spoken to the development group for the new apartments. We have plans to reach out to that community, and you know, while it is still in a similar area, it's an area where the parking is in a different location. McCormick Field has dealt with this for years. Bluegrass Festival is a daytime event. It's over, completely done by 7 o'clock at night. The music is acoustic music, so it's not loud rock and roll that goes into the night. And so we feel like that's a really suitable location for the festival. It works from a layout and functionality standpoint. And I think our big takeaway is that Martin Luther King has been an event site for a long time, and it's becoming a community park, and we agree that it's not the appropriate place for a festival. I think we can make Memorial work. That's the understanding we have from staff.
So this resolution, though, wouldn't speak to next year or the location for next year. It would just simply say Martin Luther is not going to be the location going forward after 2013. In other words, it sounds like there would be an opportunity.
We're looking for we're looking for the city to tell us that we can have it at Memorial Stadium 2014, and we've given the Eastern Neighborhood our word that we would not have it there in 2014. But it has been contingent on the fact that we can find a suitable location.
I'd be curious, Gary, what is your perspective or advice in terms of the path forward? I mean, it seems like we're moving away from it.
Staff would appreciate direction to relocate Bluegrass. It is the lone remaining event of this scale in that community park, and we have worked very closely with the organizers to make sure that it was as compatible as possible, but we have systematically tried to relocate or discontinue any other events of this size. So direction from council that this will not be something that would be acceptable at Martin Luther King Park is very positive advice.
Great.
Or very positive policy action tonight, and I would recommend it. And the staff is supportive of that. In terms of alternative locations, there are many other factors that go into that. But if there's any direction or a majority of council would like us to eliminate the range of options, that would be helpful. But what we have been trying to do is respond to the promoters and their interest, and we've evaluated Memorial from the technical standpoint. And that's about as far as we can take it.
I'm a little bit worried about making a partial decision and not having kind of a comprehensive decision for both the neighborhood and for the program. So, Jim, what were you suggesting?
That's kind of my concern, is that if we box this thing in without alternatives, to make sure, this is a good, it's a good problem to have. First of all, it's a well-attended festival. There are people, I'd say probably 3/4 of the people come from outside the area and stay overnight, and it is a good...
We're booking about 45 bedrooms in downtown based on our numbers for filling local hotels. The festival was put in September because it's a shoulder season. It historically was for Asheville, and so it was a time to drive economic business in towns and so forth. So it's definitely...
It's a pretty big event, and it, to me, seems like we're rushing to box things in with if we can give the East End neighborhood some assurances that it's not going to occur there. I just think we're doing it without a very developed plan. This is really outside our normal protocol.
And that's why I'm pushing it to make it happen in our protocol. We were here, Council, over a year ago when the neighborhood residents came to us saying, please help us on this issue. We nodded, we asked staff to work with it, and it didn't happen. So I need to make sure this happens. And my concern about just going less than a mile down the street or right at a mile we're going to have the same issue. And so that's why we need to have staff looking beyond the technical issue and looking at the residential component that's related to this festival. Great festival, wonderful. We got great attendance, your numbers are up, you sell out quickly, people really enjoy it, it's very local, branded. It makes sense. I'm not disparaging the opportunity for our community to gather around this issue. However, it's just an incompatible use where it currently is, and even the proposed site for 2014, and that being Memorial Stadium. And council, staff needs direction to say, that's not going to work, that works, yes, we're going to continue this. I'm willing to put that out there now.
I'm not in disagreement that the festival should be discontinued at Martin Luther King. I don't think there's any dispute about that. My concern is that you have additionally said that you don't like the proposed location for next year, and so I'm a little bit worried that I feel like we should be able to hand this off, and we can agree that it shouldn't be there in 2014, but I'm a little bit concerned that we're leaving this festival, we're holding the bag, trying to scramble with where to locate, and we're already preemptively saying we don't like the next location you've already been working on.
Because it's important to point out, it's right down the street, it's still in the same neighborhood.
I'm not disagreeing with you, but clearly they've already been talking to staff about locating there, and they've been working on it.
And again, they didn't include the residents, so they're looking at the technical aspect to say, hey, it fits here, but you're leaving out a whole component that will bring us right back to this situation.
I'm not disagreeing. I'm just saying, in terms of our process, I'm feeling a little blindsided here, like I'm supposed to make a decision that's adverse to one group and juxtaposing it against another when it shouldn't be.
Then let's move forward. So there's a motion on the floor. We can go through with the motion that really is clear and send staff the direction about what we expect for 2014 to start immediately. There is a motion and a second.
Could we restate the motion, just so we were absolutely clear?
The motion is that Brew Fest will not take place in Martin Luther King Park in 2014 and beyond.
That's the motion. We have a second.
And can I just get clarification?
Yes.
Are we referring to festivals of this nature and not specifically?
I think Mr. Jackson's already addressed that they've tried to relocate all other festivals from Martin Luther King Park. But if it needs to be stated that's another issue, we can bring that back. Let's just focus on this one. So we have a motion and a second.
I didn't get the second. Who seconded that?
Councilman Smith are you rescinding your second?
I didn't make the second.
Earlier you did. Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second the motion.
The motion has a second. Any member of the community wishing to address council on this particular motion?
If I may, Mayor, we just need to be real careful that we're not singling out the Brewgrass Festival versus any other festival of a similar nature.
This issue right now, as the motion stated, does talk about the Brewgrass, because Mr. Jackson, in his comments, said that they've tried to move all other related festivals like this out. So it sounds like this is the only one at this level. But if we have to change it to actually say that all festivals, then it becomes a bigger issue that we have to deal with.
What is the legal concern about excluding one festival specifically? Can you explain that?
Yes, to exclude one specific festival versus another, there may be an issue as to equal protection. There may be some constitutional issues, and we want to avoid those if at all possible.
A question for the city manager. Is this the last remaining festival that serves alcohol?
As a matter of practice.
At the location?
At that location.
Might we amend the motion?
That's something I've been wondering through this discussion, is what we're actually doing, is the goal here to prevent further festivals serving alcohol in MLK Park? And if that's the case, isn't that the more appropriate resolution rather than to ban one particular festival from that park, if that's what our goal is?
And then do we need to have an effective date or?
Yes.
Let me wade in on that question, or that point. The way staff looks at this is that it's the scale of the event. And regardless of whether or not there's alcohol there, there's a potential with large populations to damage the field and to change its character and nature and compatibility for the neighborhood. So I do favor what the city attorney is suggesting to you, and that is to make it a matter of policy that you have preferred use for this park, and that it's not of events of this scale.
And then how would we define the scale? More than 200 people? More than 500 people? More than 10 people? I mean,
I would think that you may need some further investigation into the issue and some further research into the type of festivals that you do not wish to have at MLK Park.
All right, we'll bring you back on the 13th. But I do want it clear that the residents feel like this is an incompatible use. They nicely asked us to address this as a council over a year ago. It did not happen. So now we need to make sure it happens. That's all I'm asking. And so I can go, if the makers of the motion will accept that coming back with these issues addressed at our first meeting in August, then that way, all parties who are part of this process, if you could come back at our next meeting, we will have the wording and everybody can be clear. Is it okay? All right. Thank you all, Council. Council, we have a couple of updates. We have 3 updates, and the first one is the Greater Asheville Airport Regional Authority. Mr. Lou Blauweiss will make the presentation. Welcome, Mr. Blauweiss.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor, members of the council. I appreciate your time today and letting me be here. Let me just cue this up, and we'll go from there. There should be at each of your seats a packet with some information for later review. I'll be going through most of it, just to give you some heads up of what it is. Today we'll talk about quick facts, about brief overview of the Asheville Airport, the economic importance to of the Asheville Airport to the industry and to the region, and our review and our future cast for what's going on at the airport. Starting with our quick facts, we do have an 8,000-foot runway. So we're served by 4 airlines right now: Allegiant Air, Delta, United, and U.S. Airways. We have approximately 24 flights a day, and we currently have 9 nonstop destinations. Long-term history does show growth. Back when the airport started in 1961, we were down below 100,000 passengers. Our peak was in 2010 at roughly almost 750,000 passengers, and we've dropped down a little bit, but right now, again, over the years, we show a constant increase in our passenger usage of the airport. A national perspective on the airport. I'm going to show a very brief video. Thank you. I show that because things in Washington have been broke, and not just broke, but broken. And airports are a very vital infrastructure to the nation's economy. And we are trying, as airports across the country, we're trying to get a grassroots campaign going, so communities and airports alike are talking to our folks in D.C., telling them the importance of airports, how important they are to local economies, and hopefully get the capital investment dollars that we all need to keep our airports going. Some highlights of this: 10,500 global destinations are connected to U.S. airports. It would take you 28 years to visit them all. 730 million passengers travel through the airports yearly. That's 2 million passengers a day. And 65 trillion tons of cargo are loaded at airports yearly. Airports, Inc., or all the employees that are at airports, equals 1.3 million. It's the second largest employer after Walmart in this country. $365 billion in annual payroll, and it creates $1.2 trillion in economic growth, or 8% of the GDP. Now, scaling down a little bit, looking down at North Carolina. North Carolina provides $25.8 billion of economic input to our state. 6% of North Carolina GDP, creates 108,000 jobs. Drilling down a little further to Western North Carolina, or AVL, we provide $474 million of economic output throughout the Western North Carolina, $11 million in property taxes and corporate and sales tax, and we employ 1,700 jobs, direct, indirect, and induced. For every 50-seat airplane taking off with a 70% load capacity, it generates $43,000 of local economic impact, including tax revenue. Again, it's $43,000. So every time you see an airplane overhead, it's generating revenue for our economy here in Western North Carolina. Now to touch on growth and the community involvement and some of our stats. In 2012, we did add 3 more passenger boarding bridges to our gates 4 through 6. That brings a total of 5, so we're trying to provide a protected environment for our passengers to get on airplanes. We have started the construction of our firehouse. It's roughly a $4.5 million project, including the design, and it is slated to be done by summer of 2014, at which time, hopefully, we'll still be working with the city to move them into our existing firehouse, which is something that we've come up prior. I know the current terms of the city budget may raise that in question, but we're more than willing and happy to have them as part of our property on the airport. We're still working on a West Side Fill project. It's kind of like the picture on the upper right is what the property looked like before we started the fill project. Property on the left is now almost about 2/3 to 3/4 of the way done. It should be done early next year, and we'll have moved almost 3 million cubic yards of fill to fill that area up to be able to make it ready for our airfield redevelopment project that we'll be taking on, and I'll be talking about that in a moment. Over the last year and a half, we've been working on our long-term master plan project. Last time the master plan was done was in 2001, right before September 11th. The master plan was shot. It wasn't any good at that point. FAA did not let us do another master plan because of the funding. We started this one in 2011. It's usually done every 10 years. It's a 20-year outlook on what the airport will bring to the community and what the community will bring to the airport. That's the processes of what the master plan process does. In your packet, you have a folder and you have an executive summary of our master plan project. We did hold 2 public meetings. The first one was on October 16th, 2012. It was held at the Skyland Fire Department, and it was attended by 11 people. We had no comments submitted, but one question was raised about the I-26 and Airport Road intersection construction project. We deferred that to the DOT because that is not the airport's project. We had our second public hearing on February 25th. It was held at the airport. 15 people showed up. No comments were given at the meeting, nor were they submitted in writing afterwards. Our growth in the forecast of our master plan shows a steady, somewhat increase. There were 4 methods of how our consultants came up with the projected numbers. We ended up using the growth rate, and that's the median rate of the growth rate of the 4 categories. Take too long this evening to explain how, but I'll be happy to do so at some other time. In any case, our employments are expected to grow over the next 20, 30 years at 1.67% a year. Our commercial aircraft service is expected to grow 0.5% per year. General aviation is up 1.4%. And our military is down. So overall, we see some increases steadily increasing over the next 20 to 30 years. In your pack that we also provided you a development plan. This is what the consultants and the airport staff and the stakeholders of the master plan, which involved folks from the city of Asheville. In fact, Sharon Tuck was the one that participated from the city. We had members of Buncombe County, Henderson County, Fletcher, and Mills River all involved in the master plan process. This is the long-term growth of what the airport shows. A little hard to see on this, but there is a blown-up picture in your folder that we provided. Main thing to take a look at is there's some growth on the west side of the airport once we do our airfield redevelopment project. We're also looking at some general aviation and non-commercial aviation and down in the northwest, or the northwest quadrant of the airport. Cargo operations in the southwest part of the airport. Just to give you some reference, Sierra Nevada is going in right around in here. The other thing that shows up on this is some additional aircraft ramp parking, a possible proposed new control tower, taking it off the terminal building and putting it on top. And lastly, there is talk for long-term projections of extending the existing runway from 8,000 feet to roughly 9,500. That will provide economic development for the community, providing nonstop service from Asheville to the West Coast. It's more of a cargo type of operation for economic development, but it could be used for passenger service also. Next, we're working on our airfield redevelopment project. We are under design now. Construction should begin next spring. What we're actually doing, it's kind of a confusing picture, but what we've got here is the existing runway. It's 75 feet too close to our existing taxiway. We're going to build a west parallel taxiway on the west side of the airport, use that as a temporary runway for 2 years, while we build and move our runway 75 feet to the west. It's a $64 million project. It's going to put a lot of people locally to work and protect the airport well into the future. 75 feet doesn't sound like a lot, but it is meeting it. That will meet current FAA safety standards, which we don't currently meet today. It's not an issue. Our airport has been grandfathered in, but if we do any type of major improvements, we have to bring it up to current safety standards. So that's what we're doing. Our growth, we also added, again, 4 airlines that I mentioned earlier. Allegiant added low-cost flights to Fort Lauderdale. This past June, they added some nonstop flights to Tampa, St. Petersburg, and we're in discussions with adding another flight, which we may be making an announcement here soon. We've been working with the Small Community Air Service Development Grant to provide nonstop service to Denver, working with the local community, City of Asheville, Buncombe County to do that, and Delta Airlines have put in mainline service. Some more highlights just briefly. For highlights for 2012, we did full crisis training involving all of our mutual aid partners, the City of Asheville, Buncombe County, and such have you. We've implemented a full-blown employee wellness program for the benefit of our employees to keep healthcare costs down and to improve the awareness of our employees of the importance of being fit. We also had our community involvement, our 5K run and aviation day. We are having another one. Our 3rd annual 5K run will be held September 21st at the airport, and it will be again on the full runway and taxiway. We had almost 1,000 runners last year. We're anticipating the same amount this year. Unfortunately, we won't be doing the aviation community day because of the government sequestration. We have not been able to obtain status aircraft from the military to come in for the day, so we're going to be stopping that.
Mr. Blauweiss, your time is up. How many more slides do you have?
3.
Okay.
This is just some stats from where we are today. Employment's at 356,000. Current assets are 78 million, with 16 of that million of that being in fund balance, and that's a breakdown of our revenue sources. Some national trends affecting airports, airline trends. They are cutting capacity. It's why we've seen some decreases in the past 2 years. Their airlines are putting in larger aircraft, reducing smaller aircraft, and they're also looking at airlines mergers, for example, the US Airways and the American Airlines merger, which hopefully will be beneficial to us because we'll bring back Dallas service. A mile of pavement can take you a mile down the road. A mile of runway can take you anywhere in the world or bring the world to Western North Carolina. Are there any questions?
All right. Thank you, Mr. Blauweiss. Council, any questions or comments? All right. No questions. I appreciate you coming to provide the report to council.
Thank you very much. If there are any questions, you can find me offline, and I'll be happy to answer.
All right. Thank you very much. Council, the next update is from Greg Schuler. We're going to talk about storm damages and infrastructure. Hello, how are you?
Hello, Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of council. Pleasure to talk to you this afternoon, this evening. Not so much about the subject matter, but here we go. Okay. Just wanted to do some background first. Don't have to tell you guys it's been a terribly wet calendar year this year. From January 1st through July 8th, 41.67 inches. At first, that sounded like a lot to me, but to put it into perspective, that exceeds our normal annual rainfall by a little over 4.5 inches. And that's the earliest we've exceeded that ever, and by a lot, 2 months earlier than ever. If we get normal rainfall from here on out, we're going to beat the record that was set back in '73 of 64, almost 65 inches. Worked closely with the folks over at the National Climatic Data Center, and I thought these would give some indication of what we're dealing with here. This goes all the way back to 1948, and it's total precipitation from January 1st to July 18th. This is at the Asheville Regional Airport. We actually had more rain here in downtown Asheville than they did there, but we're considerably higher. The graph was pretty telling. Not sure why they didn't have any information back in the 60s, but a 5-year gap that they didn't have any. Another graph that just shows how far above we are, our average rainfall at this time of the year. And I'm talking about weather because that's what brings me here today. I'll get into some timelines, and really I think the most telling thing will be some of the pictures I'll show later on. So timeline of events, July 3rd, almost 3.5 inches of rainfall in downtown, and next day, America's birthday, another 1.5 inches, and almost 5 inches in 24 hours is really substantial, especially with the terrain that we have. Due to that, we had several large slides occur, mostly in the northern part of the city, the night of the 3rd, early morning of the 4th. From the 3rd to the 17th, a total of a little over 11 inches hits the Asheville areas. Like I said earlier, in areas like Town Mountain and the Beaver Dam Valley, we had considerably more. We don't have any gauges up there, but you'll see in the pictures that it was very clear that we had really serious rain event up there. Excuse me. Between the 8th and the 13th, Public Works crews, the Stormwater Services Division, and some of the streets crews were on site at various places at Beaver Dam Valley, making repairs there. The residents up there really took a beating in this storm, and places like Pinecroft and Beaver Valley, they saw a lot of damage up there. Really appreciate those folks' patience with us as we continue to work and try to get these things, get their life back to normal. On the 11th, we consulted with RIS to evaluate the slide at 482 Sunset. The next day, we talked with local contractors about different options. Each slide is unique in its own way, and we have our ideas. Some of the larger ones we chose to contract out, and I'll have a list of these a little bit later in the presentation, but I find it's always good to get other ideas from people in the industry. Ingenuity is really a big part of the construction industry, and I learned something from every project, and this proved to be a pretty good move for us. So it was like a big caravan of us going from slide to slide across the city, and got some great ideas. On the 16th, we met with legal, finance, purchasing, and several folks in Public Works to see what our contracting options were. At the same time, we were talking with DOT. They experienced some of the same problems in Madison County as well as in other areas of Buncombe County. Hoping we would get an emergency declaration, we had the governor visit Madison County to view the storm events. that declaration never came, so that changed a few things for us, that some different options as far as emergency contracting and potential funding revenue. So after we met with the contractors, again on the 16th, we contacted local geotechnical firms to say, guys, we need some help on some of these. These slides exceeded our right-of-way onto other people's private property, and we were not able to go to contract with those right away, nor did we have the expertise with our own city forces to tackle those. So we have, the larger ones are currently under contract with local engineering, geotech engineering firms, and on the 18th, we sent proposals to contractors for repair work on 2 of the major slides that were within our right-of-way, and that we felt like we had a pretty good handle on how to make those repairs. Yesterday, we received bids for those 2, and those one on Spooks Branch and the other one on at the intersection of Sunset and Skyview Place. And this morning, work began on both of those projects, and happy to say that. Folks have been very patient with us as we try to move forward with these repairs. Here's a list of some of the slides that we've experienced. These are the major ones. Again, Skyview and Sunset, 36 Bent Tree, 482 Sunset, 58 Spooks, Branch Road, and Fennelly Avenue. Due to the size, nature, complexity of these, we chose to contract these out. The lower, we're going to do those in-house, not nearly as dangerous to repair, not nearly as extensive, and there's actually one more that I came on there after I had this prepared on Vance Gap Road. We have already started to try to repair some of these. A couple of them on Bent Tree Road, we were up there on Friday trying to make those repairs, and the material was just so wet still that we had to leave it alone. As we pulled it out, more would fall down below, and we said, hold up. We don't want to make a bigger mess than what we have here, so we're going to have to hold tight on those. The picture you see to your right, that is at 36 Bent Tree. Pretty substantial slide. It by far exceeds our right-of-way. And we have contacted the property owner down in Florida, and as you might imagine, they're willing to work with us. Right now, we're not sure how much to ask for as far as how much property of theirs we need. Our geotechnical folks will be moving in to do some core drills, hopefully next week, and we can begin the design process. I'm moving through this pretty fast, and there'll be time for questions at the end, or as far as I'm concerned, you can ask me now.
At the end.
Now into some of the photographs. Excuse me. This is, there's several slides in and around 58 Spooks Branch Road. This is one of the more major ones. The photographer is standing very close to Spooks Branch. You can probably tell up there we've had to close off one lane of Spooks Branch Road. A whole lot of communication with the community as they come out to see, hey, are you getting ready to do something here? What's going on with traffic? They've been certainly a part of the solution-making process. They know their traffic patterns better than we do at this point. We're learning, but they have been, they've expressed a lot of ideas, and we've been listening. Same with Sunset Drive, excuse me, in Skyview Place. This one is, it creates, this is the only one that is completely closed at this point. The others are just one-lane closures. And Skyview Place is completely closed from about 50 feet, probably south of where this picture was taken. But it allows people to access their property. Nobody is completely cut off from their property. Unfortunately, they're having to traverse a narrow one-lane road that's typically a one-lane road, but they're being forced to go two ways. So work started on both Spooks and Skyview Place this morning, so I was happy to report that. Both of them difficult repairs, but at least these two are within our rights of way, and we know how to fix these. This is one that our crews, this is probably the largest one that our crews will be tackling here at Old Chunks Cove Road. Just the material just became super saturated, just means it resembled more of a fluid than a solid, and it couldn't take it anymore, and that's what you get. Not even a full lane closure. This only got out into the road a couple of feet, but a lot of material to remove there. 482 Sunset Drive. This one is really a complicated repair. Obviously some property damage to the home below, and actually had a chance to go into that home yesterday and speak to the homeowner, and there's a great deal of issues here that we're working with risk and legal and our engineering team as well as outside engineers, and we also have a geotechnical engineer assigned to this project. A one-lane closure up on Sunset Drive where I was standing when I took the picture.
How do you get someone to come in and make, just sorry, I've walked that road a lot. Do you get a geotech to come in and confirm you can continue to drive on that road? Because it looks like it's...
That will happen. Honestly, the decision to how much of the road to close was made by myself and other members of staff. With something like what we've been through this year, and not only over the 4th of July weekend, you can never be sure. I mean, I'm just going to be honest with you, but I feel I wouldn't have it open if there was any, right, if I was that concerned, for what that's worth. I mean, this is a sinkhole at 12 Brookwood Road. It's hard to get the, all kinds of pun intended here, the depth of what this is. This is about a 10-foot hole. If you can see some of the brick down there, that kind of puts it into perspective. One of several sinkholes that we had, I've been dealing mostly with the slides. McCrae as Stormwater Services has been dealing with our sinkholes, and there've been plenty of those. And I'll say this when we get to the end. I'm almost there. 16 Pinecroft Road. I have seen worse damage in 25 plus years of doing this, but it hadn't been very often. And undoubtedly a supercell had set down up in the Beaver Dam Valley, as well as the western slope of Town Mountain, and just unbelievable damage. If you've these folks have been through a lot. They really have, and this was a really tough fix here. Our guys did most of the work right here with our crews. Questions or comments?
All right, Council, any questions?
There was a slide that landed on Macon. Is that the one from Sunset?
No, sir. The one that landed on Macon, if it's the one I'm thinking of.
The big one.
It's next to the Longchamps.
Yes. From what we could tell, that was entirely on private property.
You know, it is entirely on private property, it looks like, but at some point, couldn't it impact that road up above? I mean,
yes,
isn't there a point where the city needs to be careful because we could lose major infrastructure up above it?
Yes, ma'am. And that will be assessed. We're really, unfortunately, still in triage mode.
Right.
But yeah, I evaluated that one on the morning of July the 8th, and talked with some of the property owners up there, and that slide may be bigger than anything we had as far as mass.
Right.
It was a huge slide.
Councilman Hunt?
Mayor, I appreciate this update, and I wanted to say two things. One is I've observed staff working. I've been out and around and seen the crews, and I know they're working long hours, and you have been too, Greg. I really appreciate that. And
thank you.
Property owners, I know, are being as patient as they can as well, and I really appreciate folks in the neighborhoods that are affected being patient and respectful of the city's efforts. The city manager and assistant city manager have kept us on council well informed throughout this thing, and we've been very concerned. And I just, now that we're all here together, I want to express appreciation for everybody.
Thank you. And there's members of other members of Public Works here who can answer any questions as well. And I'm very proud to work with the people that I work with, and the folks who have been impacted by this have been unreal as far as more patient than I probably would be. I try to put myself in their shoes, and they've been real troopers about it.
Councilman Bothwell.
Yeah, I had one other comment, and that was to thank the Public Works crew. On my road is a dead end, and a tree fell across the road during one of the storms. I guess it was after the 4th, but anyway, the crew showed up in the middle of the night in the rain and cut the tree out of the road, and I was really impressed. I mean, it would be urgent for emergency services to be able to get up there, and it just blew me away how quickly it happened, so thank you.
I'll pass that along. I actually had a chance to look at the actual logs of our duty officers over the past 2 weeks, and we got some good folks on board.
I have a question not related to what we've seen tonight. The issue of our storm drains, because of the heavy rain events, Patton Avenue, it becomes essentially a lake right in front of the Rush, and several other parts of the community we see the storm drainage system. So are we looking into those as well to try to clean out the storm drains, to get debris, to kind of make sure the water's flowing a little bit more effectively? McCray looks like he's ready to pounce with an answer.
I'll sure let him.
Mayor, members of City Council, certainly we are out in full force maintaining these drains. With the events we have, I mean, a lot of times we find that we get a drain cleaned and then it will clog up with these heavy rains, but certainly we are tackling these and meeting with property owners and continue our conversations with property owners along the way. And, when we identify this, we jump on it.
All right. I left my notes on my desk, but I think one of the issues that came up via email is on Coleman Avenue in North Asheville. There were some concerns about stormwater drainage, I believe.
Yes, and we met with some property owners out there on Coleman Avenue. There's one situation, there's a drain that falls on private property that had failed and caused a sinkhole in property down there. So I met with that person on Friday of last week talking with them. Also met with another property owner down there at the confluence of two streams where they come together. They had some water that it came up and got onto their property also, and talked with them about what options. I mean, those systems fell on private property there also, and we talked about what options they had.
And then there is the road going to UNC Asheville from Merriman Avenue. The name of it is escaping me. That was, what was that?
Are you talking about Edgewood?
Edgewood. That stormwater drainage system backed up, caused a lot of problems in the neighborhood.
That's right. That's one that we have on our list to address. There was a sinkhole that came right there at the corner of Edgewood and Cecilia, and we've got that one on our list to tackle also.
Mr. Jackson, I know staff is working aggressively, and I think this is great information. In the past, when we've had events that were short-term but important, we've done a website so people can see the progress, get an update, kind of, here's my situation, what's going on. Is there any way we could do that as it relates to rain, stormwater, drainage systems, and give them an update so people will know who to contact if they have questions or a sinkhole is developing before it becomes a crater, before they call the news out, and we don't even know about it, but some type of way on our website to provide that information.
I think that's a great idea, as indicated by staff. Beginning on July 3rd and 4th, not to make excuses, but this has been a triage matter, and you've seen an extraordinary response from Public Works crews and these folks in trying to supervise and manage from the field. And that includes police department and fire department as well, responding to accidents, trees down in the street. I've seen quite a bit of firefighter work with chainsaws, but the response has been overwhelming. Now that we're getting a handle on it, we're getting these contractors on board, getting the geotech, management can pull this information together, and then we can get it posted on the web.
Thank you.
But the kinds of stuff that you're talking about that would be real helpful is really an expansion of what we have on our stormwater site right now, which is what we manage and what we can take care of. A good part of the public education that's going to be a challenge for us right now is there's probably more of the stormwater system that's on private property than it is on public property. And again, much of the stormwater you're seeing runoff and slides that you're seeing here doesn't tell the whole story. A lot of this is on North Carolina Department of Transportation roads. You mentioned Patton, for example, and they too their hands are full, and they're really getting after this right now. So all that's to say, it's been a challenge up to now to just respond to this extraordinary condition with people in the field trying to make sure that homes and streets and travel conditions are secure. But now we can get back on this, and our public information officer can put some of this information that's now available to us and compiled.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Council, any other questions or comments? All right, thank you, staff. Council, we have one more update, and that's a legislative update. And Tony McDowell is going to give that update. I'm excited about this. Tony, welcome.
Good evening, Mayor and Council, and appreciate the welcome, Mayor. Hope I don't disappoint with my report tonight. In place of Mr. Richardson, just wanted to give you all a quick update on legislative activity since you last met in late June. Typically, by this point in the year, the legislature has adjourned, but as you all know, this has not been a typical year, so they are still down in Raleigh at work, and one of the final items they're working on is the first thing I'll mention in this update, and that's the budget for their new fiscal year, which actually began a few weeks ago. There has been significant progress on the budget in the last few days. The House and Senate released an agreed-upon state budget 2 days ago, and which is likely to receive legislative approval later this week. Legislators are expected to vote in the next few days to set on the budget, and that'll possibly set the stage for their adjournment later this week. One thing to note, in the budget bill, it does include funding for a transitional hold harmless payment. You all may have heard about this for municipalities for 1 year at 50% of their current level. Asheville is actually not one of the cities that's impacted by this, so just wanted to point that out to you all if you've seen that in some of the League of Municipality updates. So hopefully the budget will get passed this week, and the legislature will adjourn later on. Another item where there's been progress since we last talked to you is the Tax Reform Act. House Bill 998 was passed into law, and there were significant changes to that from where we started out earlier in the year. If you all remember back in March of this year, when we started talking about this tax reform effort, we were concerned that there was going to be significant impact to us in the current fiscal year, a significant negative financial impact. And then as time went along, we began to see that there wasn't going to be an impact in FY 13-14, but even as late as the end of June, we were still concerned that in future years, the city might see significant revenue losses from tax reform. But the good news is the version that ended up getting passed was revenue neutral and actually had a slightly revenue positive impact for the city of Asheville. And this chart here shows the impact of the final agreement for the next 6 years. And if you look at this middle line here, the final agreement, you can see that we actually expect from the agreement to get an additional $100,000 in revenue in the current fiscal year, and then somewhere in the $200,000 to $300,000 range in future years. And you can see that that's significant from where we were in late June when we were showing you all numbers that looked like we were going to lose potentially $2 million in upcoming years. So this has been a significant victory for cities and for local governments across the state that this bill got passed in the form that it did. Another item that has seen movement since we all last updated you was the Park Authority Bill, House Bill 418, to establish a regional parks and recreation authority. It was ratified on July 16th, and it allows Buncombe County to create a CRA with no prohibition on municipalities, and the county would have ability to appoint all members of the board, is how the legislation currently reads. Also, there has been some activity on the House Bill 568, the Asheville de-annexation bill. It passed the first Senate reading and was referred to the Senate Committee on Rules and Operations on July 9th, and that is the bill that would de-annex the Asheville Regional Airport. We also have we have a slide on the House Bill 708, which is the bill that would prevent cities from transferring monies from any enterprise fund to any other fund in the city. There hasn't been any activity on this bill since May, but we wanted to insert it and just let you all know that this bill has not moved forward, because if it does, it would have a significant impact on us and other cities across the state. For example, we currently transfer about $600,000 every year from our parking fund to our transit fund to support transit operations. And if this bill were to move forward in future legislative sessions, it would possibly threaten that source of funding for transit operations. And finally, just a quick word on House Bill 94, and there's a companion bill, Senate Bill 112. This is an amendment to some environmental legislation. And we have this in here. It was referred to the Committee on Rules and Operations of the Senate on July 16th. And we just wanted to point out that there's provisions in this bill that relate to billboards. And it specifically says that provides a permanent grandfathering for all billboard sites statewide, even if the sign is non-conforming and laying on the ground. It would allow industry to rebuild forever, preempting local control over all existing permitted signs. And there's also language in this bill that would preempt cities and counties from adopting environmental ordinances which are more stringent than state or federal law if the ordinance regulates a field that's already covered by a state or federal law. So this bill, while not having any financial impact, does bear watching if it does move forward in upcoming sessions. And that is all I have this evening. I'd like to just thank Alex Carmichael in the city manager's office for helping me get all this data together this week in Jeff Richardson's absence.
All right, thank you very much. I do have a question real quick. Can you go back to the last slide? So Martha, the city of Asheville negotiated after many years an agreement with the billboard industry as it relates to electronic billboards and the removal of older billboards. So basically that forfeits that law, or that agreement?
Haven't had a chance to really study that law in detail, but I would assume that the intent of this House bill would be to preempt any local city ordinance that may be inconsistent with House Bill 94.
And with the wording on this, it sounds like even the new law the council approved to disallow electronic billboards,
yes,
that also may be voided.
It may very well be subject to this bill, and how this bill specifically reads, and I have not read the specific language. What it may be saying is that cities in North Carolina, you have no authority over these billboards, period. And so the state is coming in to exercise complete authority. Again, I have not read the specific language. But let me also point out one other provision, that last sentence there, which says it requires penalty proceeds collected by local governments to be remitted to the civil penalty and forfeiture fund instead of the local government general fund. For a number of years, we have collected stormwater civil penalties, and I'm not exactly sure of the approximate amount. And we have retained those funds in our general funds because state law allowed us to do that. This law would say that we can no longer keep those funds in our general fund. We have to turn it over to the state. So that would have, I'm not sure how much of a financial impact, but it will have an impact.
It speaks to your email this weekend regarding the penalties for the development of Merriman, well as $5,000 that potentially in the future we lose as a community.
Yeah.
Can
In
we
the
get an
past, we've
update on this
collected-
one?
Yeah, in the past, we've collected anywhere from $5,000, and I think in one case, we collected about $16,000 worth of civil penalties for violation of our soil erosion and stormwater ordinance. And we were able to keep that, but with this bill, we would not be able to.
Can we get an update, a detailed update of an analysis of this bill going forward? It doesn't have to be as a presentation, but it'd be great to have a memo on this impact and what it would look like financially for the city, and what authority we will have when it comes to billboards, stormwater regulations, things, those fines. Councilman Smith and then Councilman Bothwell.
One of the questions that I had was hearing what was going on in the General Assembly today around the regulatory reform omnibus, that one of the pieces of that bill would bar municipalities from requiring contractors to use living wage requirements. And I was wondering if you had any information on that bill.
I do not. I have not heard any update on things that we discussed today.
I'd like to learn more about that.
Okay.
Councilman Bothwell, then Vice Mayor.
Yeah, I have a question. It seems like if they're going to adjourn this week, that the chances of the annexation bill passing are diminishing if it's still in the Senate committee at this point. And I've got kind of an open question. I'm not quite sure where I'm going with it, except that the airport director talked a while ago about the city locating a fire station at the airport, which I thought was kind of off the charts if we're de-annexed. And also, isn't the airport doing a contract with Skyland now for their fire protection? I don't know. I'm just sort of opening all that up. It seems like the de-annexation may not occur this year, and that seems to put all the rest of that on hold.
Let me follow up with you on that information.
Okay.
It is not anticipated that the de-annexation bill will go through, and that's been reiterated by the bill sponsor at this point.
Okay.
I think it has been moved to the Senate to preserve its life in the event the legislature chooses to take it up again next session.
Okay. Thank you for the explanation, or clarification.
One of my, we're talking here, I'm curious about House Bill 94 and the companion bill, Senate Bill 112, and I've been following this because there's been a flurry of activity involving amendments to impact the water, what I call the Water Act for simplification purposes. But the reason this bill gets a lot of attention is because it's also the fracking, it also involves a lot of fracking, deregulation essentially. But the fact that it's been put in rules in the Senate, I don't know if that means it may not go or not, but it certainly has gotten a lot of activity, so we should watch it. If they adjourn this week and don't pass it, I don't know how worthwhile it is to study it, but of course if they do pass it. The other issue, and I think we'll need help from the League of Municipalities and the Metro Mayors, but is the general preemption of local government to adopt ordinances that are more restrictive than the state's allowance. And that's going to be, I think that's going to, well, every city is going to have to review their ordinances to see where that impacts us.
Yeah, Councilwoman Manhammer, it's my understanding that that provision that would preempt cities from adopting more stringent ordinances than state or federal law would allow, that provision has been removed, but it is only applicable to the environmental regulation, but not to general city ordinances.
So is that, and I was thinking about that in terms of like setbacks off of streams and things. I mean, it seems like we will have a number of ordinances that impacts.
Yes, it would impact anything dealing with the environmental ordinance. It would impact it. Correct.
All right. Thank you very much. Council, we have only 2 public hearings because the last one, item C, the public hearing for a substantial amendment to the 2013-14 Consolidated Annual Actions Plan for Community Development Block Grant Home to consider a Section 108 loan to Eagle Market Streets Development Corporation for the Eagle Marketplace Commercial. That public has been pulled from consideration, but I have a question as to why. Mr. Jackson, why was that pulled?
I'm not familiar with that one.
I thought that approved, I thought it had gone through the HDD committee and was
I
approved.
think this is a separate one or something. I think this may be a later, Mr. Stottinger was in the room a moment
Because of
ago.
the Eagle Markets.
The Eagle Market Street item here was pulled because there's additional analysis that needs to be done in the proposal. We gave a briefing at the Planning and Economic Development Committee today, and we'll do so at HCD as well, because they've been following this real closely. There are additional estimates of cost associated with the project, core samples, and so the city and county staff have decided that it would be best to get a third-party opinion on the value engineering, because as of 2 weeks ago, the costs were going up considerably, and the timing of this particular hearing, item C, needs to be done when the final structure of the project is set in place. And if it's moving at this point to include additional sources of funding or substantially increases the cost, that would be something that would need to be firmed up before you have the public hearing.
Okay. I was surprised we would have to have a public hearing on this issue, seeing that the original dollars for the Section 108 loans for years has been for this particular project that we've paid interest on, or repaid the federal government. So I'm interested in seeing how long will the delay be?
We're trying to respond back and have this on your next council meeting.
Okay. All right. Thank you. All right, so council, we have two public hearings, and we're going to run them together because they're related. But before we do that, make the announcement, I do need to have a motion to recuse Councilman Pelley.
Move to recuse?
Second.
All right, Councilman Pelley,
Thank you.
you're excused. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. Just want to make sure it's official. All right, so council, we're going to run public hearing A and B together, which are the public hearing to rezone 86 Ashland Avenue from Regional Business District to Central Business District, and public hearing to consider amending Chapter 7 of the Code of Ordinances to include parcels located at 86 Ashland Avenue in the official downtown height zone map and key pedestrian street map. Ellen Glines will lead us through both of these presentations. And council, at the end, we will need two motions, one public hearing.
Thank you, Mayor. Members of City Council, members of the public. I think we need to change to show the Exhibit A map here. It'll come up in just a minute. Property owners at 86 Ashland Avenue did request, send an application in with the city to rezone those properties, 3 properties on the east side of Ashland Avenue from regional business to central business district. Sorry, Maggie. Great. Thank you.
Thank you, Maggie.
This is Hilliard Avenue to Orientu. This is Ashland Avenue, and these are the subject properties here. This blue line represents the existing zoning lines. So this is Central Business District to the east, and regional business in this area, and then office business too. So we have a little bit of a collection of zonings in that area. I'll show you on the map. This is the Central Business District. This is Cox Avenue here, Hilliard at the top, and this is Ashland Avenue. You'll notice that the area north of Hilliard Avenue is all zoned Central Business District. The city undertook a rezoning effort about 2001 and expanded the Central Business District into the area south of Hilliard Avenue and over. And at that time, it was felt that the area between Cox Avenue and Biltmore had the biggest impact of potential for future development and following the old commercial core and following that pattern. So this request has recently been received. Staff reacted to it and responded. We took it to the Downtown Commission and brought it to their attention. And so their recommendation is, yeah, it's probably a good time to expand the CBD into this area.
When we worked on the downtown master plan in 2009, it actually incorporated this area here, which is about the area of this parcel, into the central business district, and sort of had plans for that, felt that that was a future growth area. So we're responding to that with this application and bringing that to your attention. Related to that, though, any properties that are zoned central business district, they do have some additional maps that have overlays for certain properties, and one of those overlay discussion items is the height zone map. And you might remember that there are primarily two height zones in the downtown area. There's the intermediate height zone and the tallest height zone in blue. Areas right around Ashland here and Hilliard are have the intermediate height zone, which is 145 feet. And in areas, further west, around Patton Avenue or taller, around the old downtown core, that area is intermediate height as well. So when we review this with the Downtown Commission, they recommended that we just expand the intermediate height to cover these properties. So I have a map here that would show that. These are the three properties again. They would just sort of carry around that intermediate height to the extent of these three properties that would, if it was approved for the rezoning change. An optional change is the key pedestrian streets map. In the downtown area, we have a number of streets that are noted as key pedestrian streets, and parcels that are along those streets have additional development requirements relating to their position as a primary pedestrian corridor. There's some development standards that have to be met, some additional things that have to be met there. Hilliard Avenue through here and Ashland Avenue north of these properties is also on the key pedestrian streets map, and the Downtown Commission recommended that it be extended to those three properties as well. So I have a map here that would reflect that if this was approved to look something like this. The request was reviewed with the Downtown Commission, had their full support. The Planning and Zoning Commission also concurred with that evaluation. Staff feels that this request, these series of requests, it complies with the comprehensive plan, the downtown master plan, and City Council's goals and visions, and it's a reasonable request. I can answer any questions, or I'll maybe step out of the way so you can have a public hearing.
All right, Mr. Glines, we're going to open it up for the public hearing, and then if the council has any question, we'll call you back up. So we're going to open the public hearing to public comment at this time on either of the two issues before us this evening. Seeing no one come forward, council, questions, comments, or a motion?
I have a question, Mayor.
Councilman Smith.
With the key pedestrian map on there, could you pull that back up, Alan? Is South Side on there?
South Side is not on the map.
And I was curious. That's what I was thinking. And can you talk a little bit about that? Why that connection isn't one of the key pedestrian pieces?
It's a good question. I think that when the downtown master plan was adopted, that area, we had some streets in addition to the ones that were adopted shown here. Other ones were not included on that map. I think that the development pattern was not felt to be moving in that direction just yet, but it's certainly something that can be looked at. I didn't really comment on this just a minute ago, but when the Downtown Commission first heard of this request, there was interest in sort of studying areas further south along Ashland Avenue, coming all the way down and having a look at that. And there's an opportunity at that time to kind of study the key pedestrian streets map and see if we have some areas left off that need to be on it. So we haven't, we are working on some other things right now in the Downtown Commission. We hope to take a look at that later this year, and we can hopefully bring some recommendations back.
Well, it's my guess that it belongs with the other key pedestrian pieces on there. So I'd urge.
I think that's the interest it has. The zoning's probably a little more crucial right now, but I think the interest is there to bring it down.
And with that, I'd like to make a motion to approve the zoning map amendment from regional business to central business district as a standard rezoning, and find that the request is reasonable and consistent with the comprehensive plan and other adopted plans based on information provided in the staff report and as stated in the staff recommendation.
Second.
The motion has been made and properly second. Any further questions or comment from council?
I would add that the height part of this pretty critical, and everybody looked at that too, because it needs to be scaled the way it is. So I think that's good consideration for the neighborhood back up there. Just a thought.
And Councilman Davis, you're comfortable with the intermediate height
Yeah, I think
overlay here?
I think it's appropriate. Yeah.
All right. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. The motion carries. Council, yes.
We need a second. We need the second
Yes.
motion. Mayor, I'd move to approve the amendment to the height zone map to include the intermediate height for the subject properties, and also the amendment to the key pedestrian streets map to extend this designation to the subject area, and find that the amendment is reasonable and is consistent with the comprehensive plan and other adopted plans based on information provided in the staff report and as stated in the staff recommendation.
Second?
Any further questions or comments? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. The motion carries. Council, that's the last public hearing issue we have to take care of this evening. The next order of business is for us to determine who we are going to interview for the Public Art and Cultural Commission, and we'll turn it over to the Vice Mayor for that consideration.
Thank you, Mayor. We have one vacancy to fill on the Public Art and Cultural Commission, and the commission itself has submitted its preferences for appointment, but if it's preferred, we can go ahead and just select folks to interview. Does anyone have a preference either way? Are they ready to appoint, or would you like to interview?
Could you review the recommendations from the Public Art and Cultural Commission?
Yes, their first choice is Denise Drury. I don't know if I'm saying that right, but that's. Second is Victor Palomino, and the third is Constance Richards. I would note that this commission's makeup seems to be heavily women. That's all I'm noting about it.
I'd like to make a motion to approve Victor Palomino to take that seat.
I would second that.
Okay. All right. Any further discussion? All right. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All right. We have a new appointee. And we are concluded with our boards and commissions work, and we are concluded with business unless there's anything further. Okay.
Closed session, I think.
But we have
some public comment.
So are we going to adjourn from the closed session? Is that the idea? That we would adjourn from the
I would
closed session?
assume so.
I would assume so. Okay. I have two folks signed up for public comment. The first is Vicky. Okay, I can't read this last name very well. It looks like Ballard. Okay. Please come forward. You have 3 minutes to make your public comment, and please I know I just said your name, but state your name for the record.
My name is Vicki Ballard. I'm Executive Director of the Colburn Earth Science Museum in Pack Place, and I will tell you, I sent my son a letter one time, and he called me and he said, "Mom, it's great to get a letter from you. Can you tell me what it says?" So you're not the only one who has trouble reading my handwriting. I am here to talk to you a little bit about the Colburn and also about Pack Place. The Colburn is the smallest organization in the actual building at Pack Place. It's located on the Biltmore courtyard level. The Colburn was established in 1960. It's been an Asheville institution for a long time. And it was the first museum I ever visited as a child. I grew up in a farming community in the north end of Buncombe County. I grew up poor. My family has lived in western North Carolina, particularly Buncombe County, for many generations. Seeing the Colburn was transformative for me. It brought things into focus that I had never seen in quite that way before. So it was really important to me when I came on staff as executive director that I give other kids the same opportunity that I had, that I worked to see that those lives were changed the way my life had been changed. So the Colburn does a lot of work with kids who are economically disadvantaged. We provide subsidies to all schools who visit the Colburn to pay for children who can't afford those school trips. If there are schools who do not have resources to pay the full price, we offer them reduced price field trips. We do free programming for libraries. We do free educational programming for after-school programs. We work with kids who are at risk of dropping out of high school. We provide as many services as we can to the community, not just in Asheville and Buncombe County, but throughout the region, because we recognize that Asheville and Buncombe County are central to everything that happens in the western part of the state. I have a special feeling for the Colburn because of my experience and because of what it can bring to the community. Science education is critically important now. I heard a lot of conversation recently about economic development, some of it in this meeting, and that economic development conversation revolves primarily around tourism. And tourism has always been important to this area, but tourism does not provide living wage work. Tourism does not provide an opportunity for our students to grow and stay in the community. It does not provide an opportunity for them to have jobs that are going to allow them to have, can I have like another 35 and a half seconds? And you can keep that. So I would ask, in North Carolina, 62% of the current jobs require science-based technology, math, and engineering skills. 21% of the population can fill those jobs. We know that education on the lower grades is what gives kids the advantage of moving into those fields. The Colburn is located in Pack Place. It is in a position to need assistance in maintaining its visibility and its viability as Pack Place goes through changes. I hope that this council will take into consideration the importance of science education and the service that the Colburn does for this community. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your presentation. Next we have signed up is Dora Nelson. Ms. Nelson, if you could come forward and just state your name for the record.
Hello, my name is Dora Nelson. I'm a 31-year veteran teacher and a resident of Asheville, and I thank you for the opportunity to address the council. There are 2 points I wish to make. One as an educator and one as a taxpayer. As an educator, I wish to stress the importance of science education and the contribution of the Colburn Museum to students in Western North Carolina. Because of the heavy emphasis of testing on reading and math skills, the basic science curriculum can often consist of lectures or facts about what science has discovered, then along with memorization of a long list of strange words. The Colburn brings science to life for so many of our students in Western North Carolina. They provide the type of education and educational support that cannot always be measured directly in dollar amounts, at least not in the short term. The average citizen is faced increasingly with having to grapple with matters of science in their everyday life. Some of the country's most complicated and urgent public policy debates have at their center had questions of science. It's imperative that the public is engaged in science and be scientifically literate. The distinguished biochemist Bruce Albert states, "Students should be taught how to bring their own independent thinking to important questions, to experience the scientific method so as to learn about the difference between data and speculation, how to frame a question, and how to approach a problem critically." The Colburn does these very things, thus augmenting the science education that students receive in the classroom. For many Western North Carolina students, and the Colburn receives students from the entire Western District, not just Asheville, a trip to the Colburn is their very first and sometimes only contact with the Science Museum. It's imperative that the Colburn be able to continue to carry on this type of education. It's important for our community in the long run. My second point as a taxpayer has to do with city support of agencies inclusive of arts and science education that are very important to the citizens of Asheville. City Council has set a priority by imposing a tax increase to give $2 million to the Asheville Art Museum. This was carried out in a way that was not transparent, and I feel that the citizens of Asheville did not have a chance to have public input in this. A tax increase specifically for the Art Museum was imposed on Asheville citizens without opportunity for public discussion. As a taxpayer in the city of Asheville, I question the priority when it's evident that there are so many other pressing issues. Police, fire, public works, city employees, funds for city services, including infrastructure, roads, and schools, are all in dire need of tax dollars. And I truly question the decision for that tax increase. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so very much, Ms. Nelson. I do want to just point out a couple of things. One, we did have a tax increase, but it wasn't directly related to the Public Art Museum. That was in the budget. And during our budget hearing process, it was listed as one of the items for consideration for council to fund. And so it wasn't an opportunity for the citizens to give input on it. I do want to clarify that. And there may be other council members who want to go into more detail, but we can also provide you that information. And on a side note, as a parent, I've spent time at the museum recently, and I'm curious, is the museum closing? I might have missed something.
The Colburn, you're talking about the Colburn?
Yeah. No? Oh, okay, the way that it sounded like it was about to close, and I didn't know that. It sounded, I just want to be, if you could come forward, I just want to make sure I'm clear, and for those who are listening at home, to ensure that it's not closed.
No, the Colburn is not closing. Because of the changes taking place in Pack Place and the building, the construction that's going to be going on over the top of the Colburn, the building is being taken down for the Art Museum expansion, and that is over the actual Colburn Museum that will be taken down. Because of the change in signage, the lack of signage, the lack of access, the fact that with the direct lease from the city, there will be some problems with egress and ingress because of the way that we're supposed to come in will be through the Biltmore Avenue entrance, and that does not meet code. The plans to have that meet code have not been made available. I haven't seen them. I don't think they've been presented. So there are a number of problems that just have not been addressed that are going to affect the
That's what I need
whole.
to know, because we have a liaison, and I'm going to put the spotlight on Councilman Hunt about conversations with all the tenants, progress.
Sure. As the mayor mentioned, I'm the council-designated member of the Pack Place Board, and concerns about the Art Museum expansion and impact on Pack Place have been a topic in the press and here in the past few weeks. So let me address a few things.
Thank you.
Pack Place Board of Directors has focused on the Art Museum expansion and the impact on the other partners and occupants of the building since 2003. In 2003, the Health Adventure announced it would be leaving. An agreement was reached by a 2/3 vote of the Pack Place Board in 2003 that made it so the Art Museum could plan the major renovation that it anticipates now. That process has essentially been accelerated with the earlier than expected departure of the Health Adventure a couple of years ago. And so things have really accelerated to figure out how the Art Museum's renovation can move forward. Pack Place Board in February, by a 2/3 vote, again reiterated its commitment to allowing the Art Museum to do this renovation. It gets more complicated than that. But part of the process defined in the Pack Place Board over the past 5 months, essentially, has been the establishment of a working group that for many weeks met weekly, actually at 7:30 in the morning, for week after week on Tuesday mornings. I was a part of it, to focus specifically on issues like impact of the Art Museum's project on other tenants, specifically the Colburn. There was a good bit of time spent there. the viability of a second entrance, the signage. It is still a work in progress. It's clear that there have been complex feasibility issues wrestled with within the Pack Place Board and among the occupants there. But Mayor, I'll report that it's my experience that the working group has worked together closely and carefully and has made good progress. There's still more work to be done. And again, the Pack Place Board, I think the way Pack Place was created back in 1989, the City Council and other funders expected the Pack Place Board of Directors to oversee the space allocations and renovations that are underway with the tenants. And my effort as a member of that board is to press the Pack Place Board to work closely with the Art Museum and the other occupants to make sure that this goes well. And it's difficult because, as Ms. Ballard pointed out, there are going to be significant impacts. But it's also very clear that the arrangement of space within Pack Place as it was laid out in 1989 is no longer a fit given the move out of the health adventure and the need for the Art Museum to expand. So it's difficult, but I've kept council informed probably more thoroughly sometimes than you want over the past few months. It's still my recommendation to council that we look to the Pack Place Board of Directors to collaboratively work with the partners there to resolve these sorts of issues. The city does have a key role. There is consideration that the city would revise its lease arrangements with Pack Place and with the Art Museum to reconfigure lease arrangements. The city has a duty to look at that and a careful decision that we'll need to make, but the work at the Pack Place level is not quite done yet.
All right. Now,
I appreciate the time to explain that.
In future meetings, it may be best to have an update from the Pack Place Board and the Art Museum for the community to hear firsthand from the major players of the Pack Place facility to come before City Council, and all questions can be asked. And so, would you let me know when your process that process is moving forward, and that way we can schedule it to make sure all issues are being addressed about egress and making sure construction timetables are clear and transparent, so people will know. Those are only sheets that I had signed up. All right. And Mayor Michael Love, are you asking for 3 minutes or 10 minutes?
Pardon?
Are you asking for 3 minutes or 10 minutes?
I prefer the 10, but I'll...
All right. I just need 3 people to give up their time to allow you to speak for 10 minutes. 1, 2, 3. You got 10 minutes. Thank you, sir.
Integrity or not? I'm raising serious questions regarding the integrity of Vice Mayor Manheimer, Councilman Hunt, and City Manager Jackson. It appears Manheimer and Hunt violated the City Code of Ethics, and City Manager Jackson has violated the Code of Ethics of City Managers. It appears Manheimer and Jackson have violated the principle of conflict of interest. All of this pertains to the $2 million Asheville Art Museum tax. I'm advised that Manheimer and Jackson are personal friends of Pam Myers, the executive director of the Art Museum. The law firm that Manheimer works for, the Van Winkle firm, has represented the Art Museum in the past. Anna Mills, an attorney for the Van Winkle firm, was a board member of the Art Museum and was involved in a Pack Place Executive Committee meeting on November the 19th, 2012. Manheimer held a mayoral campaign fundraiser April the 26th, 2013 at the Art Museum. Political fundraisers do not meet the fundamental nonprofit rental requirements of education, arts, and science as required by the Pack Place legal documents. In an attempt to stop me from speaking at the June 25th, 2013 City Council meeting, Manheimer was the only council member that interrupted my presentation twice. Manheimer has recused herself from voting 25 times in the past 4 years. Why didn't Manheimer recuse herself from voting on the Art Museum $2 million tax? Friendship? Something else. Manheimer and Jackson should have recused themselves from any involvement in presentation or decision-making dealing with the Art Museum. Council Planning and Economic Development Committee. Members, Manheimer, Chair, Hunt, member, Bothwell, member, and Jackson, staff liaison. Isn't this the committee that dealt with the details of the $2 million Art Museum tax proposal and/or the direct leasing idea? Hunt was appointed to by the City Council to serve on the Pack Place Board as a city representative. Out of 17 board meetings, Hunt attended 9. He usually left after he accomplished what he came to do. What he came to do was to make suggestions, some in the form of motions, that favored the positions of the Art Museum instead of taking a neutral position and act as a Pack Place board member. Unless the City Council told Hunt to be the broker negotiator between the Pack Place Board and the Art Museum and keep the issues out of the public eye, he decided on his own that it was his role to play that broker negotiator. The Pack Place Board and member organizations have assumed Hunt has been representing the City Council. It is hard for me to believe that the City Council told Hunt to go to those Pack Place Board meetings, keep the issues out of the public eye, do what the Art Museum wants because we don't want to upset anybody. If the council told him to do that, shame on the council. There are several members of the City Council, most likely Mayor Bellamy, Jan Davis, Chris Pelley, Gordon Smith, they're really in the dark about what's been going on. It appears there have been violations of the Code of Ethics of the Asheville City Council by Manheimer and Hunt, resolution number 10252, and ethical violations by Jackson. City Council needs to act on these issues. And I've prepared a 14-page document that spells all this out that the City Council can read and act on. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Michael Love. All right. Anyone else wishing to address council? Yes, sir.
Mayor, council, thank you for this opportunity to address you. My name is Wally Lee, and I represent the Buncombe County Republican Men's Club. Our purpose today is to read a resolution honoring the veterans of the Korean War, also known as the Forgotten War. Our hope is that the council will consider and approve a similar resolution on behalf of the city of Asheville. I will read the resolution. At this 60th anniversary of the cessation of hostilities of the Korean War, no words can properly convey to the brave men and women who fought so nobly our heartfelt thanks for their selfless service. Therefore, we hereby resolve to convey such thanks to those who fought to preserve the freedoms that we enjoy today as American citizens. Many gave some gave all. For this, we do humbly offer this sincere tribute. And this is by the Buncombe County Republican Men's Club. Now, if I may, I'd like to recognize any Korean War veterans that are in the crowd, if they would stand up. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And can you give a copy of that to our city clerk? And I don't find that it would be a problem. We've recognized veterans in the past, and so I don't mind having us to do a formal resolution for council's consideration.
Okay.
So if you give...
She has that.
You have a copy? Okay. Thank you so very much for bringing that to our attention. Anyone else wishing to speak tonight before City Council? All right, Council, we have a motion to go in closed session.
Mayor, move that Asheville City Council go into closed session for the following reason. 1, to consider the qualifications, competence, performance, character, fitness, conditions of appointment of an individual public officer or employee. The statutory authorization is contained in GS 143-318.11A6, and to prevent the disclosure of information that is confidential pursuant to GS 160A-168, the Personnel Privacy Act. The statutory authorization is contained in GS 143-318.11A1. Second, to prevent disclosure of information that is privileged and confidential pursuant to the laws of North Carolina or not considered a public record within the meaning of Chapter 132 of the General Statutes. The law that makes the information privileged and confidential is North Carolina General Statutes 143-318.10E. The statutory authorization is contained in NCGS 143-318.11A1.
Second.
The motion has been made and properly second. We're moving into closed session, and we will adjourn from closed session.